Good morning, everybody. I'm going to call this meeting to order. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Marla Billinghurst. I'll be chairing this meeting this morning. To my left is Mr. Richard Whitbread. Our assessor this morning is Mr. Matthew Barakis, and our recording secretary is Ms. Katie Sutherland. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment roll in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that applicants or the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council and is independent of it and the City Administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the Board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the Board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony, followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. And can I remind everyone to please turn off their cell phones. First matter on the docket this morning is 70 Isabel Street.
So please state your name. Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just two of us, a single guy's release.
State your name. Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Is that correct? Thank you.
Please proceed when you're ready.
Okay. File number 19-3115, roll number 13096, 178-100, 70 Isabel Street. It's a row house. One building, 2 stories, built in 2014. It's got 8 suites, doesn't have any parking. Construction class D, wood or steel framed exterior walls. If you go to page 2, you'll see request for income information. We've got 15 and 17 on file. We don't have 16, but we have the year that's applicable to our reference period, so they're good in that regard. Okay, so on page 3, we have our income value summary. This is the modeled income value summary, so parameters were taken from the model. 8 units, 2 bedrooms, 4 units, 4 bedrooms, 4 units to come up with the 8 total units. The average monthly rent assigned by the model, $971.08. So that's a gross potential rent of $93,000 with a 3% vacancy rate, and a model expense rate comes up to net operating income of $47,112. The modeled cap rate that was assigned to this property is 4.2. That's pretty low for this area. This property is located Isabel and McDermott. This is just about the lowest cap rate that can be assigned by the model, and in my opinion, it is inappropriate using a 4.2 cap rate for 70 Isabel in consideration to what we've seen other sales in the city transacting at. Inappropriate. So the applicant and I have had some correspondence, and so I'm making a recommendation on this property. If you look at my page 3, you'll see that there's a little box on the side that says actual net operating income. That's the actual net operating income that was taken in by the property. So you see on the net operating income side of the fence, we are low. We're low by about $6,000. So last time around, it is worth noting that this property was assessed at $658,000. This time, we're looking at almost double. Last go around, the net operating income assigned by the model was only $39,000, and the cap rate was much higher. So to be more consistent, to take into consideration the area that it's in, and looking at the appellant's brief, the recommendation that I'm putting forward, I have it on paper here, can be handed out or not. I used a 5 3/4 cap with the actual NOI, because this property is more unique to this area. An 8-unit row house built in 2014 for this neighborhood is an anomaly. So using the 53,283.51 with a 5 3/4 cap, which is what I've seen in the applicant's brief, generates an amended market value of $926,669. Now, with those actuals, the mailer can be found on page 7. So that 53,283 was calculated by removing the mortgage payment, the debt servicing, and taking the actual income versus the actual expenses received. Within those calculations, management was included at 12%. Typically, that's 5%. Repair and maintenance per unit was just shy of $1,100, or sorry, $1,100 per unit. Now, typically, management's at 5%. I didn't change it because knowing just the neighborhood, that it is probable that the repair and maintenance will go up in the future. So I just took the straight actuals in this instance, and it came up with a recommended value of $926,669. If you turn to page 8, you will see the permanent value on this property in August of 2013 was $750,000. So when you factor in the cost of the land, the price of the value of the land, some appreciation of the market between then and the date we're looking at, it seems that 926 fits the bill. Page 16 and onward, you'll see photos of the place taken June of 2015 by a member of our staff. So it just gives you an idea of what the place is like. You don't typically see this kind of property in this neighborhood. So I thought it was appropriate to use the actual income, and a 4.2 cap rate is, in my opinion, unreasonable. So to summarize, my recommendation is 927,000 rounded. That's my evidence, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Newman, do you have questions?
I do. Can you explain to me how the 5.75% cap rate was arrived at?
I was trying to come to a conclusion to this property with you. I read your report. I didn't think that you were being unreasonable given the neighborhood the property is in and how relative to the properties around it is dissimilar.
Is it your experience that when the rent level goes up, the net operating income goes up, that the risk will become greater of the ability to maintain that higher level of income? Let me say it to you differently. I didn't ask that question very well. You've talked about the neighborhood, you've talked about the fact that the neighborhood is difficult, and that's why you've made an adjustment to the capitalization rate. You talked about the repair and maintenance likely to go up with the passage of time, recognizing the nature of the neighborhood. What that's going to do is it's going to put at risk, I'll suggest to you, the sustainability of the net operating income. Would you agree with that?
Well, it depends on whether they can get their increases on a yearly basis. I did try and recognize by not pushing the management down to 5%. I just kept it at 12 to try and recognize that the repair maintenance is going to go up. So I'm trying to be understanding of the situation.
Okay, and so if you look at your page 5 of your brief, that's the chart.
Yes.
I mean, the capitalization rate you're selecting of 5.75%, that's the CBRE low end of the cap rates for low-rise B buildings. It's below the high end for Colliers, for low-rise buildings, and that's why I asked earlier, where is the cap rate coming from? Because I'm suggesting perhaps the cap rate should be a little bit higher. I'm suggesting perhaps the cap rate should be at 6%, which based on your net operating income, would create a value of $880,000. Does that seem unreasonable to you?
It's pretty close to what my recommendation is. I was trying to come to a conclusion based on the evidence provided in your report.
Right, so I think what I've heard you just say is that applying a 6% to the net operating income you've utilized in the recommendation, which generates a value of $880,000, I think you're saying that wouldn't be unreasonable?
I mean, they're so close to each other. I mean, one person offers 926, the other person offers 880, and they negotiate. You know how they go.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitbread.
So I'm hearing you say the location is a big factor in the cap.
Location, this one, it was modeled with a 4.2 cap,
Right,
which
for
is
the model. Okay.
quite low.
And did size come into bearing on that? Being 8 units?
For the modeling, yeah, our modeling, model cap rates are determined by size, the age of the property, and the area of the properties.
Yeah. So then, age being only 5 years, that would have a countervailing effect.
Yeah, definitely.
Excuse me, sorry.
Is there a preponderance of impact by any one of these, or are they all equally weighted, location, size, age?
I'm not involved in the modeling process, unfortunately, so I don't know which ingredient gets more.
Okay, no, that's fine, thank you.
Thank you, I have no questions.
So, and again, when I prepared the brief, I didn't anticipate the recommendation, and so there are parts of my brief that address capitalization rates. If you look at tab 1, for example, there is a series of buildings, much larger buildings, I'll acknowledge, 2701 Scotia, 2015, 180 units with a 5% capitalization rate. Page 3, 10 Hallenquist, 2005, 126 units with a 5% capitalization rate. 3590 Portage, 2005 building, 59 units, a 5% capitalization rate. The reason these were brought forward was simply to indicate that when you look at the age, what are essentially new buildings are getting a 5% capitalization rate. And I had understood, and from hearing from assessors previously, that my sense was that the biggest factor in the cap rate of 4.2% being applied here was the number of units. It was the 8 units. And I think that's really the biggest factor, because you can see that even larger buildings that are new are also getting a 5% capitalization rate. Of course, with every apartment building, there's a spectrum of rates. My view is that this is in a high-risk area. It's a high-risk property in terms of the sustainability of the net operating income. Regrettably, before very long, the repair and maintenance is going to go up. It's going to become difficult to maintain this place. You're going to see erosion of the net operating income, I'm going to suggest. And what you see with the assessor's capitalization rate information, when you look at the chart, is that the view of the world is that low-rise buildings are certainly, in a general sense, in the 4.9 at the low end to 5.3, but we see 5.7 reported by CBRE at the low end. We see 6 at the high end. And my point simply is that when we look at those capitalization rates, this one has no parking, which is very unusual for an apartment building, and that can turn into a significant issue if you don't have parking. So at the end of the day, I'm prepared to utilize the net operating income in place. I'm suggesting a 6% capitalization rate, which will turn into a value of $880,000. Subject to questions, those are my submissions.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions for the applicant?
Have you inspected the property?
No, I've not been inside.
No, it's not indicated, at least on my rent roll, a level of vacancy. Do you know if there's a vacancy issue with this place, like if the income stream isn't stable?
I don't think thus far there's been a vacancy issue.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Woodruff.
Yeah. The applicant provided evidence that the building had a permit of, I think it was $750,000, with a
Correct.
start date of March 2013. Do you know what the end date was on the construction, when occupancy occurred? I couldn't find anything in that research.
So the permits, they've all been closed. I believe at least partial occupancy began in 2015.
Early, late?
We got pictures from June of 2015, so I would assume
So
so.
mid.
It looks done.
And I was gonna say, the reason I know that is because it came on as a supplementary initially in that time frame.
Okay, so we're dealing with a 4-year-old property, essentially. Okay, thank you. No other questions.
And I have no questions. Is there a need for summary?
No.
Thank you
Thank
very
you
much.
so much.
Good morning. The next property is 85 Florentino Street.
Just have 1 second, Matthew has some question.
Sure. Take a, thank you.
Is there a sub?
Oh, do you need, oh,
A sub-pending?
Yeah, it's not, I guess
they
I
want to
finished.
finish?
When is it once we finish after reference date?
I don't think so, because I was the one who went out and did this. So no, there's no pending sub on it.
So how did, and the file, when we had
Excuse me.
nothing to file, because it used to be on here. Sid's story.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
Please proceed when you're ready.
Okay. File number 19-41.
Just one second, Matthew. Thank you.
You ready, Mr. Stark?
Just about.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Perfect, thanks.
File number 19-4160, roll number 040072563665, 85 Fiorentino Streets. Parcel use code, it's another row house. 3 stories, 1 building, built 2018, 40 suites, 51 outdoor parking spots. Construction class D, wood or steel framed exterior walls. Page 2 shows the request for income information. This property was built in 2018. So as a result, it wasn't around during the reference period we're looking at. So we don't have within the reference date income and expense information. It didn't exist, but there's no reason to go for non-co-op because it wasn't there. We got subject sale history on the property, June 8th, 2016 of 688,200. There are any notes, but that's probably the value of the land, what the land was purchased for. You've got our income value summary here. So I actually went out, I was the one who put this property onto the roll. So out of the 40 units, we've got 21 bedrooms, 12 2-bedrooms, and 8 3-bedroom units. The average monthly rent, $1,350. So that comes up to a gross potential rent of $648 with 3% vacancy rate, and a modeled 41.59 expense ratio generates our net operating income. And then we've got our 4.2 capitalization rate as determined by the model. So the average monthly rent on this property, $1,350. It was taken by looking at the rent roll that was submitted to me, to the department, February of 2019, and then it was factored back based on rent control, because within the reference date information, trying to get the most accurate valuation was taken by looking at the actuals and then going back in time a little bit. That's how we put new buildings on, just so we try and, set them as properly as we can. And then the model takes them on the income side from there. Vacancy parameters, expense rate parameters were modeled, so that wasn't touched. Pardon me. So, see the rent comparables on page 4. So a row house, there's not as many row houses in the city, not as many new ones. So I just took the rents from apartment buildings in the general NCA that were newer, that had a similar number of units. I didn't put much weight on the rent comparables, them not being row houses. Being the person who put the property on the roll And taking into consider the post-reference actuals and factoring them back, I can say with certainty that we're not overstating the rent. Page 4A are examples of our capitalization rates that took place during the reference period. The purpose of showing this is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. They're not comparable specific to the subject property. There's the same four you see in all our evidence, same package, so I'm not gonna sit on it all the time.
We are familiar.
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard about them.
Ward, yes.
Ward, yeah,
Right.
333.
there you go.
Some weekend reading for the board.
I have nightmares about.
So do I.
Page 5 is our cap rate chart, and then page 7 shows some information. Shows a cost report, highlighted with the arrow, shows the project costs at $7,309,000. And then page 10 to the end of my brief, that shows you pictures of the place. Again, I was the person who went out there and took a look at the property. So you'll see that it's built. Looks nice, it's in that new area, kind of behind Kildonan Place, behind the Canadian Tire by the casino. So it's all done. At the time, so I guess there was 2 buildings, this property. I've got 2 buildings, but it's a total of 40 units. The rent roll. January 2019, building 1 was 10% vacant, and building 2 was 20% vacant. So they're getting closer to leasing all the way up, but they weren't quite there yet. So that's my evidence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Story, do you have questions?
Sorry, you went quickly, Matthew. At what date was it 10%? One building, 10%?
So I have, at the time of the inspection,
Okay, that's.
which is January 4th, 2019,
Yeah.
we've got building 1 was 10% vacant, and building 2 was 20% vacant.
Okay. And at the reference date, do you give any status report at the reference date? April 1st of 2018?
Well, okay, so there's 2 identical row house buildings on this property. The construction of the first one was completed March of 2018, and they were intended to be sold off individually as condos. However, an inability to sell during the construction period, the building operation was changed into apartment. The second building was constructed exactly the same as the first building, was completed in September 2018, as per the leasing manager. So it looks like at the reference date, they were just starting to get off the ground.
Okay, well, our information is at the reference date, there were 16 units finished of the 40 and occupied, and the balance would be vacancy. That may or may not tie into yours. And you indicated something just now, that this project was initially conceived to be a condo project,
Yes.
and there is no indoor parking, no garages or parking.
It's all outdoor.
On the street. Okay. And just in looking at going to your page 11, the suites, and just looking at the photographs,
Yep.
would you consider them modest or high-end? What would you consider these suites to be?
What would I personally consider them to be? I mean, they're brand new,
Yeah.
but I can't remember if that was granted or not. I don't think so. They're brand new.
Okay. And I don't know if you were, I can't recall, but up until 214, the city in the city parameters, the valuation of property, used to put in that all community row housing, irrespective of age, location, or condition, was given a 6% cap rate. In 2016, the city followed through with that policy, but didn't put it in the parameters of assessment. Are you familiar with that?
That predates my time.
Okay. So, what you're looking at is, in your brief, you're showing that the project is 7.3 million overall, when it's all finished.
That's what the construction cost was.
Yeah. And you're suggesting an assessment using 4.2 as a cap rate of 8741, correct?
That's what the model is giving me.
Okay. And we talked briefly at the beginning, and up until about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, it showed as vacant land only at 8,741,000.
Showed where?
In the property search assessment.
Well, I issued the supplementary notices back in February of 2019.
So they should have been on the system.
Well, the value that's under appeal here right now, that's for the completed building. Like, we did it with the
Yes,
1350 times 40 times 12 gets us our gross potential.
Okay, so just to
income.
summarize, maybe we can get cut to quick. So this value that you've used is as if it were completed,
All done.
all done, but there is, unfortunately, there's a significant vacancy that isn't being picked up by the model.
Well, they're leasing up.
Well, are they?
Yeah.
So, through that period though, that we're talking about, there was a vacancy.
It takes time to lease properties up.
Okay. Good, thank you. That's my
Thank you
question.
very much. And Mr. Whitford?
Was there a building permit? I didn't find one in your brief.
Yeah, you know, there would have been a building permit. But we do have the cost report directly from,
I thought I heard you say a
on
number.
page 9, yeah, on page 9.
Page 9, that's.
And I feel that's probably more accurate. And at the bottom, and there's yellow, 7309, 508.
7,309,000.
That's what they have there. That's what they gave us, so I tossed it in.
And that's as per what date? Reference date or after reference?
No, that's the completed project, because the thing wasn't done. I didn't get out there till the beginning of 2019, this year. And then, because we're looking at current condition as per the April 1st, 2000 reference date, I showed what the costs submitted to us for the current condition.
Okay. The location, I'm not familiar with this particular location. You said it's north of the mall?
It's, yeah, I think it's up, like you go down Regent, and I think it's Peguis.
Okay.
You go north up Peguis, and you know how there's El Tassi,
Yeah.
there's,
Elmy is there, Elmy?
Almy is further north. It's south of Almy.
Yeah, I've got a better picture.
It's behind the
now.
casino, around,
Yeah.
behind the casino and the mall.
And how would you characterize that area? Poor, good,
Oh, it's booming right now.
booming?
Yeah, they're building like crazy.
Okay, good. Thank you. That's all my questions, thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you. Mr. Story?
Yes, I'm just trying to figure out how to approach this. We didn't file brief because of there was confusion over the assessment information. And we did try to get ahold of this, first Mr. Lucky and then try to get ahold of Matthew. I don't think we connected in the last couple of weeks. So if I could, I'd like to hand out just, our main position here today is cap rate. And the 4.2 we don't believe is an appropriate cap rate. We believe 5.75 is appropriate. You're going to be making arguments on the next property, which is not quite as convoluted, that relate to the cap rate as well. But if I could, can I,
Well, isn't that
Well,
new
this is
evidence?
new evidence.
no, it's not new, this is.
You'd have to show it to the assessor first and see if he
It's
would
just a calculation with the.
approve it.
Position of, I'm suggesting we do a cap of 50% vacancy. It's not that
If
big
he
a-
agrees to it.
Just a calculation.
Well, I mean,
I can go-
He's gonna verbalize it and have you guys write it down anyway?
Yeah.
So,
I'll just say.
sure.
You're in agreement then?
Yeah, it's,
Okay.
Pass it?
you're gonna get it in front of you anyway, let's just save some time.
Okay, well, thank you. If you don't, thank you very much.
Thank you. So just to go very quickly,
Calculate.
just a calculation.
we tried to figure out how to do this and explain to the owner how the numbers were higher, the initial assessment was quite a bit higher than the estimate of the total value of the project. So what we've done is we've taken the assessor at $8,741,000, using his 4.2%. We believe that the vacancy has to be recognized. The vacancy on this property at the reference date was about 35%. There's 16 units at the reference date, but now we're at this stage in the development of it, and there's still 10 and 20% vacancies in the property. So I'm asking that the board consider a 15% vacancy. We accept the parameters of the assessor at $648 as a potential rent, but that's a potential rent for all the suites, like 40 suites. Again, at the reference date, only 16 were finished and occupied. And we're using the expense ratio. And we've capitalized at 575, and the reasons being that we believe that, first of all, going back, row housing, irrespective of condition, location, or age, was always at 6% across the citywide up until 2018. Although I think in a lot of cases it was used right through to this cycle. But it wasn't for this because it's new construction. So I'd ask for 5.75, and that comes about again because of the infamous Ward. Ward sold to the owner. The same owner, by the way, and Ward is the owner of this property, Smart West Management. And they bought it with, in their mind, a 5.5 cap, and I brought some stuff in this, and that would be in our next brief. So I would ask the board to consider a 15% vacancy because of the uniqueness of the ramp up. There is an anomaly in the marketplace right now as well. We've had a glut of condos put on the market, and this was intended to be a condo project. They couldn't sell it, so they decided to go with a rental program. So it is, so Matthew's absolutely correct, there's a glut of property of housing being built, a lot of condominiums, off of McPhillips and Aurora, off of behind the casino as we're talking here. But that gave rise to this not being, it was not built to be a rental property, it's built to be condos. There has to be ramp up considered in these things. They're not leasing as quickly because there's competition. They're fighting fiercely for tenants, all of these rental properties. But I would suggest that until there's stabilized, that the assessment be 5,595,170, 5,000,595. Thank you.
Thank you very
I'll
much.
expand upon capital language next time.
Oh, thank you. Do you have questions, Mr. Story?
Yeah, okay, so used a 15%
Yes.
vacancy rate,
Yes. It's called a ramp-up period, we're in the ramp-up.
ramp up period. So, in your opinion, would a property of this value and this size be purchased for a long-term investment?
I would, yes, I would suggest it is.
Okay,
These people are investors in multi-tenant residential property, they have a number of them. They
okay.
buy them based on the return.
So, knowing that they're buying it for the long haul, wouldn't it be reasonable that the seller wouldn't accept an offer that was based on short-term ramp-up, as you referred to it as,
based on the fact that the building was just built? Like, wouldn't that be expected? Wouldn't they formulate their offer and value what we're
Yes,
looking at here?
they would build that vacancy into the valuation, which the city doesn't do with the model.
No,
my
that's
point.
not what I'm saying. Wouldn't they frame their
Reduce the
offer
price?
based on it operating normally and expecting that as it's just built, it's gonna take a short amount of time to ramp up?
Purchasers know that it takes time to ramp up, absolutely. Vendors know when they sell that it takes time to ramp up. You're gonna see some unique situations in the next property we're going to do. The purchaser provided an occupancy guarantee, he guaranteed 95% occupancy, and he was called upon to pay
Okay, you
that.
know what, just in the interest of
Yeah.
time, we'll talk about the next property when we get there.
Ramp up is considered, it's very important. The other thing is, remember when you're doing valuations for assessment purposes, it's quite different than an appraisal. An appraisal looks at the potential future earning, and they'd be looking at increases in the road, down the road, and that's what a purchaser would be looking at in appraisal. For assessment purposes, we take a point in time, but we have this anomaly, and the anomaly is that properties come on the market midstream that may or may not be finished, but the model doesn't recognize the ramp-up period or the extraordinary components.
We are looking at the current condition of the property, correct?
Physical condition of the property in the assessment, you're correct.
And it is completed.
Virtually, yeah, I think there's one or two small occupancy permits to finalize, but yes, it's all intents and purposes, it's finished.
It's complete. So it's rentable and
Rentable,
this
yeah.
is for the 2020 tax year, correct?
Correct, 2021, right.
Okay. Those are my questions. Or, sorry, so 575, do you have any cap rate evidence? for
Well, we
that?
have Ward, of course, everybody has Ward.
Yeah.
And we have the situation that there's, I think it's generally accepted that cap rates and risk are higher in, I'm gonna call it community rural housing. And it has to do with the lack of density. They're low-density properties, they have large lawns, they're not as appealing to an investor as a high-density an apartment block with rental units that has a small roof that accommodates, will have to be repaired. Repairs are generally higher in this type of housing. It's wood frame. In another one, that we're doing in a few moments, we're having some problems with noise transfer. They can't seem to solve that problem. Wood floors, low profile, low density. Generally, that's what gave rise to a higher cap rate. So 550 is a reasonable cap rate for Ward, then 575 is more than reasonable for this row housing. And Ward has parking, closed parking, there's no parking, there's no indoor garages here.
Well, I'll touch on, I guess, cap more after. For this property, do you know if there's any other townhouses in this area? It's a growing area, right?
Yes.
Would you agree it's mostly 4 to 5 story, more traditional, large apartments?
Yeah,
going up
and
in
with
that
due
area?
respect, I'm a big fan of Transcona in that area, but there has been success with development out there because people find the land cost is a little more reasonable than other parts of the city. Certainly than Bridgewater or South Point, the land would be less, one would presume.
Okay.
So that's, I think, why you're seeing that boom out there.
So as this is,
I think most of the condos, most of the stuff that's built in there you're asking about, I think most of it is a condo, I think, but I don't know.
there's a few apartments, I put on a couple out there.
Mostly condos.
All right, those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitford.
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions.
Okay.
Is there a need for summary?
No.
Thank you very much. The next property is 100 Southview Crescent.
Okay.
File number 19-4637, roll number 03092985315, 100 Southview Crescent. It's a row house. Again, that's the docket today we're looking at. 17 buildings, 2 to 3 stories, built from 2015, 2016. It's got 148 suites, 66 indoor parking, 120 outdoor parking. Construction class D wood or steel frame walls. Pardon me. Page 2, they handed in the most recent mailer, which is the one that we're looking at, so they're good in that regard. We got subject sale history on the property. I believe that's for the land. $3,600,000, September 2014. Page 3 shows our income summary on the property. 82 bedroom units, 68 3-bedroom units for the 148 total units, with our model rent of $1,724.51, and our model parameters comes up to a net operating income of $1,952,000. So that's 1 million. Or sorry, that's the net operating income, yeah, and the capitalized value at 5%, $39,057,000 rounded. So you've got our comps on page 4. Tried to find row houses. Again, row house comps aren't the easiest to come by. So tried to find some newer row houses to make the net bigger to capture them. So the comps, they're not quite as high as the subject property in terms of the rent assigned. However, comparable 1, comparable 2, they're only 2-bedroom units. Comparable number 3, the rent is only $1,564, but it's also built in '77. Comparable 4, got average monthly rent of $1,400, and it is all 3-bedroom units. The subject property is 82 bedrooms and 68 3-bedroom units. I'll touch upon more with the income calculations as we go forward and get to the actuals collected by the property. Cap rate evidence, again, page 4A and page 5 and 6. So we've got the rental residential income statement submitted to us on page 7. So what we're looking at here is saying after vacancy and free rent and discounts and whatnot, other income, we've got $2,831,662. Our effective income is, gross income is $2,989,224. So we're higher, but we are close. Then when you look at the total expenses of this property, we've got $910,781. Our expenses are higher. We are at $1,036,364. So if you took the total revenue they actually collected at $2,831,662 and subtracted their expenses, $910,781, you're getting an actual net operating income of $1,920,881, compared to our $1,952,860. On a percent change basis, that's less than 2% difference. So we're pretty
pretty close on that, so I didn't make a change in that regard. Pardon me. Flipping through here, onto page 9, 10, and 11. We've got construction costs of this property. Total cost, page 11, says here for the total units, we've got $21,488,057. So as I was researching this property, I went into our system and I found out that it's sold. Now, I don't know if this was a share sale, maybe the applicant, it's indicated that it's sold. Now, we don't have anything from Land Tales, perhaps the applicant can expand more upon the sale. But on page 13, you'll see at the bottom of my page here from April 21, 2017, it said the property sold for $38,750,000. Now, we don't have that as going through.
Sorry, Matthew, what page are you on?
Page 13.
Page 13 is,
Don't
oh,
help.
here,
It's kind of cut off.
Oh, page 13, this one here? Oh, flip back one? That one.
Page 12. Oh, maybe it's
13.
So, that was,
It looks like,
Oh, probably before,
Mr. Stewart, it looks like this.
this one?
yeah,
Yeah.
that one.
It says sold right above Lumen.
Okay.
So
Isn't it being offered for sale?
it says sold there, $38,750,000. Looks like it's the Capital Group. Page 15, hopefully the applicant can give some more information in regards to that. Page 15 shows a picture of the exterior of the property from Google 2016. And then, so I Googled some more, and I tried to find out what's going on with this sale. And then there was a sale listing, if you go to page 16, shows it's being, with a list price of $38,750,000. CBRE Limited and Rock Advisors are exclusive listing agents for the property. So, looks like they're indicating a value that's highly similar to what we are cranking out in our model. If you go to page 18, it'll show that they provided a very sparse pro forma showing $38,774,000 as an estimated market value on this property.
I think the bottom
What
of
page you
our
on now?
page is-
18?
I think ours is cut off.
Yours got cut off?
Yes.
Ah,
Yes, the bottoms of all of these pages are
17 is the
missing.
one with the black background.
yeah, because mine are numbered. I guess it must have been a.
Because we're missing the bottom halves of all the numbers, so.
Really?
Where it says
Okay.
estimated market value.
Well, it didn't sell anyway, so it's okay.
Okay, so they're saying 38,774. And then carrying on from that page, I just shows some population data and then the layout of the property, and then there's some interior pictures, so it's new. It actually looks finish-wise similar to the last property, except the kitchen looks bigger, looks like the suites are bigger. So, it's been indicated that it's sold for right around what we're assessing for in 2017, that's what this area was sold for. I don't know if this is a share sale or not. Our net operating income is highly similar to the most recent financials submitted, therefore I didn't make a change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let's start with the offer to sell, and sell if there's a potential. There was no sale, but what's the date of this paperwork you got?
If you go to page 13, hopefully it's not cut off, but mine says it was scanned into our system here. 4/21/2017, so that would have been April.
So, and the picture, the image above is in September 16, correct?
The image above,
No, on page, you said page 15?
13.
13. Page 12. I don't have a 13.
It's cut off, it looks like a
Math
12.
here.
It looks like a 12, yeah.
Sorry,
hard to follow.
confusion is not a strategy here.
Yeah. It's working nonetheless, yeah.
Well, it's
Okay.
working.
Okay.
This one.
So, okay. And let's look at, so the picture on page 15, the Google picture is image captured on September of 2016.
That's page 15, yes.
Yes. And are you aware that there was a long, first of all, are you aware that this was a distressed sale?
Distress?
Yeah.
What do you mean by distress?
Well, it was motivated purchaser, that's it. You know,
Motivated purchaser? Or
vendor.
vendor? So it did
So
sell?
Yes, we'll get that, it's in the brief, it's in our brief.
Okay.
So this was September 16, 2 years before the reference date, correct? And then the offer to sell, which is your page 17, what's the date of that?
Page 17. It doesn't look like there's a date on it.
How about 16, because it's offered for sale, it's being offered for sale here.
Let's see here. Anything I can pull a date off of? Well, they're looking at population on page 19. They're describing 2015 information in their demographics. So I would assume probably 2016
So
following.
they had, and they're still, are you aware they're still suffering with vacancy?
I'm not aware of the current situation outside of what the income and expense mailer is indicating. So it's indicating what, 100,891 divided by rent residential 2916701. So that's like a 3.4% vacancy. It seems pretty
Correct, yeah.
much in line.
Yeah, it's actually 4.4 when you go through the financial statements and 3.4 if you go through your model. Let's get back to the, just for a minute on cap rate page. It's not numbered, but it's the one with the, with Ward and Maxwell and Talbot and Roche. It's the capitalization the city presented.
Mm-hmm.
And you're aware, I'm sure, that Maxwell, Talbot, and Roth had significant or major renovations anticipated at the sale.
Well, I know another agency has come with rebuttal saying that, but there's also attached to that rebuttal, for instance, on Roach, just off the top of my head, where they have, we have, and they've included too, a sales mailer which indicates that they purchased rock, which we have at 4.84, 4 or 5%. So it looks like the market is telling us it's in line with what we're calculating.
And are you familiar with the confusion over 333 Ward Avenue?
Yeah.
And that is the owner, same owner as this property, by the way, will suggest to you that he bought it at 5.5, and using the actual appraisal is 5.23. Are you aware of that?
Yeah, I know about, we've been talking about this for a couple cycles now.
Yes.
And there's two camps. There's the 544 camp, and then there's the other camp. It's us, and then Altus, they provided an actual stabilized breakdown at 5.13. They stabilized the waste and snow rung. They used the most recent, which was the lowest year, instead of using average, which they usually do, which would bring it below 5.1. So our 5% as per calculations that we've seen seems supported.
So you're saying Altus made an adjustment to the actual financial statements?
No.
Based on the amount of snow?
No, they stabilized, right? So I'm saying they stabilized at 5.13, but.
So you're aware that there's confusion as to what that rate is, but it's somewhere over 5%.
Well, I'd say 5%.
Okay? Okay, that's fine. And the financial statement, just, one quick question. If you go to page 2 of your grade, is it page 2? The financial statements, are these numbers at the bottom? It's not 2 of 2, is it? Oh, we don't know what number that is. The residential income and expense statement,
Yeah, yeah.
what
I
page
got you.
number is that?
We got 2 pages here, so the
Yeah.
page 7 is 1 of 2, and page 8 is 2 of 2, so that's the financial statement.
2 of 2, oh,
yeah.
okay. Okay, and so you'll see the net NOI is, if you take the actuals,
Yeah,
the NOI is 1,920,880, correct?
that's what they're saying, yeah.
And they're getting there, and you gave us the numbers a moment ago, 2,831,562 is the potential revenue,
That's what, well, not potential revenue.
actual revenue.
That's what they have reported as their
Right.
actual revenue.
And then expenses of 911,337, correct? To get to 1,920,225.
We've got 910,781.
It's actually 911,337, but it's close.
Okay.
We're very
Yeah.
close. Okay, and really, what that is the expense ratio, actual is 32%, the model is 34%. The model is actually showing that expenses would be higher than they're experiencing. Is that correct?
We are giving them more expenses than they are reporting, that is correct.
Okay. And it's wood frame construction?
Yes.
And you're not aware of the transaction whereby it traded by virtue of a share sale?
I mean, I did briefly have a chance to look at your
Yeah.
stuff, and I believe that's indicated in there,
Yes.
if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. And you're aware there's an occupancy guarantee, 95%?
An occupancy guarantee.
Yes.
That's what, I know you included that into your,
Okay. Okay, I just didn't know if you knew that or not. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you very much, Mr. Woodburn.
No questions.
I have no questions either, so please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, thank you. This is, again, if you go to page 2 of our brief, you'll see that this is classified, the property use code is commercial row housing. Again, we've had this particular, the sup on this, Mr. Lucky represented the city, and the acknowledgement was at the hearing, based on our history of experience with this type of property, is that the city had a different, captured them differently, again, until they were in the, actually used to be in the parameters of assessment and evaluation guidelines. Irrespective of age, location, or condition, they were all at 6%, because there's inherent risk, there's more risk associated with this type of property than there is in higher density properties. But you'll see here that it's acknowledged as being commercial row house. Our position is that, if we go to page 3, the assessor is at $3,062,730. The owner is $2,952,454. The actual vacancy is 3.4% that the owner is asking for. The city uses a model vacancy of 2.4, which is citywide vacancy for, generally for apartment buildings. Doesn't necessarily take, or doesn't take into consideration ramp up. 34.67 op costs and a cash flow 1,952,860, which we just went through with Matthew, and we agreed to that, or we acknowledged that that's what's in this financial statement. At assessors at 5%, we're suggesting it should be at 6%. If we we flip, this is just from my property, just tells us how this is determined. Then we go to page 6 of our brief, and this starts to get a little bit interesting. So the sale was for 50, this was a motivated purchaser, they were having financial difficulty, they purport that they built it on spec without having leases in place, and I think the lease-up was much slower than they expected, and they ran into financial difficulty. So they put it up for sale, that's probably where the paperwork came from. Mar West bought 51% of the project in shares. It was a share sale, they bought 51%. The vendor carried back a mortgage at 3.6% interest only. So it was a motivated vendor. The vendor also provided a 95% occupancy guarantee for 3 years. For the first 3 years for closing, he guaranteed, and he's been called upon to top it up, to make the occupancy 95%. And as warranty, because of the concern, Mar West typically don't like this type of property because of the extraordinary costs when you get to a low-density building. It's got high ceilings, it's got landscaping, it's got front yards, it's got basements, it's got, each unit has a sump pump. They're high, expensive to maintain, and it's generally accepted they're expensive to maintain. That's why they have the 6% over citywide that they have in the past. So they're all repair and maintenance as warranty for 2 years from closing. So it's like buying a car and getting a 2-year warranty. And you'll see that your expenses are higher only because the vendor had to completely redo the attics and whatnot, they had water penetration. Had they not had this proviso in there, the owner would have had to pay it. The developer had built the building without anticipated leases signed, resulting in a much higher vacancy, much slower than anticipated ramp up. It all has to do with how you're ramping up. There's been a glut of condos put on the market. There's been a glut of multi-tenant rental properties put on the market. And one wonders when we're going to saturate, but it could be shortly after they bought this property. Photographs on page 7. You'll see that some but not all the units have garages. They're wood frame. They have some problems with noise transfer from suites because of that. We go to the financial statement, and I actually did, taking these financial statements, put them in the proper financial statement form, and we've already talked about it, but it's an NOI 1,922,25.
Sir, what page are you on?
Oh, this is a hand, I'm on page 9 of my brief, and we've just converted this to a financial statement with expenses by suite, and just confirming the key to this is the NOI on page 11 of 1,927,080, which Matthew and I agree on. And I did put in 13, page 13, the decision or lack of the confirmation of the assessment of Mr. Lucky in 217, and that was a situation where Mr. Lucky acknowledged that the city has typically used 6% of all row housing, but he said this was brand new, so it's actually the kind of override the parameters of assessment to do that. But we were in for 6% at the time. If you go to page 15 of our brief, the infamous ward and St. Anne's, we've used these primarily because of location, but they're two, they average out at 5.44. We've got the ward. I brought it, I think the board's seen enough this, so I'll give it to the secretary. If you want it, I was gonna do 5 copies, fortunately I didn't, save a tree. But this is a complete appraisal that gave rise to the confusion.
Can I
That can't
introduce
be-
new evidence
That can't be,
unless?
Well,
No,
we're going to be, okay, I'll do it in rebuttal. It's rebuttal to your cap rate. Okay. So these are the cap rates on page 15 of our brief. Then you look at the multi-tenant housing, low-rise, high, 6%, wood frame, doesn't have parking garages. I don't think 6% is unreasonable. Non-recoverable expense is not appropriate for this hearing. That is it. And then I have some rebuttal on the assessor's cap rates. If I can handle those. Thank you. And I'll just explain what this is. The ward appraisal is 116 pages, so rather than that, I'll give you a copy of it, but I paraphrased it here. This is what we be supplying in these hearings. So the city is using a 5% cap rate from, and primarily ward is the only one that's kind of significant relative to those other three. And I just want to bring something to your attention. Can everybody get a copy of this? Okay. So you see that firstly, this was never between any of the parties that bought the building or sold the building. It was FWS group of companies. It was done in 2015, this appraisal, and it was done for purposes, it's on the first paragraph, compliance with the shareholder agreement requirements. So the property was brought to Mar West's attention. They buy apartment blocks in the business by Don White, Collier's commercial agent from Collier's, and said this property may be available. Are you interested? They provided it to, and it was being offered at 5%, but the asking price was $18,820,000. You see it on first page. And if you flip to page 60, you'll see the 5% has been selected. The 5% is based on 940,864, and the appraiser is $18,820,000. A year later, Mr. White came, Mr. Martins, Cornelius Martins, said he wasn't interested at $18,820,000, that the 5 cap didn't meet their it was too low. It didn't meet their business model and how they operate. And so he passed on the property. Mr. White brought it back a year later and said there's motivation to sell. Why don't you consider $18 million? And if you flip the page, they did buy it for $18 million. The key to it is, I can paraphrase it, the key is that the property, had it sold for $18,820,000, it would have been a 5% cap rate. It didn't. It sold for $18 million. And if you flip the second page, which is 60 of the appraisal, but this shows you how that $18,820,000 was derived. A couple of things jump out. The last paragraph before the box said that with consideration given to the characteristics of the subject property, including location, age, condition, mix, quality, and projected income generated, as well as to the declining trend in capitalization rates. So in other words, they're looking ahead, forward-looking. Their appraisers, they're looking ahead and saying they feel that there'll be a declining cap rate, which is cap rate compression, of 5%. So they use 5% for purposes of the appraisal. But it didn't sell for $18,820,000. I put 2 little stars here because Mr. White came back to Mr. Martins a year later and said, you know, I know you didn't like it at 5%, can you live with it at 5.5%? And they decided between themselves to make an offer of $18 million, which they did, and it was accepted. And part of it, they actually felt that the cap rate was higher because they too made an adjustment. You see 2 little stars here. Caretaker is $46,000, and management is $48,000. There's $95,000 worth of management in the apartments. And the apartment doesn't lend itself to, the ward particularly, are all 2-bedroom apartments, so you're $1,000 a month. That's a lot for a caretaker suite. So they said that they would, they thought they could save $40,000 a year between those two items, and so in their own mind, that would actually increase the cap rate, but we haven't done that. The third page is based on the appraisal, and the appraisal was in February of 15, they bought it more than a year later. The appraisal was 948.64 NOI, which we've seen attached, page 60. The appraisal was 18,820,000, and the cap rate based on the appraisal, if it had sold for 18,820,000, was 5%. And that was reported out by Hofer Wilkinson to their associates, which is Altus, and they apparently were not aware that it had sold for 18, I gather. But in any case, when you go through the process, you'll see at the bottom that if you take the purchase price actual is 18 million, the unadjusted NOI is 940, that's 5.23%. When he bought it, they anticipated they could save $40,000 in duplication. They had just done it on Kearney and Belleville, where they had 2 apartment blocks close at hand and saw an economy. Rather than have 1 caretaker in each building, they had 1 for 2, and they thought of that, and that's why they made an adjustment. If the adjustment is reasonable, they would have a 5.45% cap rate, and they buy it at 5.5, and they bought it. So that's just clarification of that one cap rate issue. What we're really here today about is the cap rate on this type of property. You're living with your neighbors, there's some shortcomings in this type of property. Again, landscaping, the land to building, the land to suite cost is extraordinary because there's such low profile, low density. So I respectfully submit that the assessment recognize a 6% cap rate, $2,932,000 rental revenue, and the expense ratio of 981 is 34.67, which would agree with the assessment, and 6% versus the assessor's 5. And I'm asking for an assessment of $30,831,000.
Thank you very much. Questions?
Okay, so just starting on Ward here.
Yes.
So initially, it was 5%.
No,
That's what the appraisal-
5%.
That was the appraisal, correct?
A year earlier than it was ever introduced to the ultimate purchaser, it was 5% based on 18,860,000,
Okay,
whatever it is.
so
It wasn't
originally,
based on, they bought it for 18 million, and there's a confusion.
did they do more than 1 year of data analysis to come up with this number?
The appraiser?
Yeah,
I can't say. There's an appraiser in the room, Mr. Smith, you can tell, I don't know. Did they do a year? I don't
did
know.
they do more than 1 year, like did they stabilize over a period of years?
Well, I don't know, you have to read the appraiser, I don't know, I presume they do. They also look forward. He indicated right in the appraisal that the 5% is based on age, condition, location, plus assuming a declining capitalization rate. That's forward-looking, that's not what we do here, that's assessment. I don't know if that answers your question.
Okay, so you mentioned that this was done a year earlier, and then Mar West, they're the purchaser?
Mar West bought it, it was offered to them. It was, the appraisal that was showed to them initially had nothing to do with them. It was, Mr. White brought that in, it had to do with shareholder disagreement.
Okay.
That's in the cover of the letter. It's in the letter you got.
So you mentioned there was motivation to sell on this property from the vendor,
The
correct?
motivation to sell was on Southview. They couldn't keep making payments. The wrap up was too, they're motivated.
So this property here, I think I
No,
heard you
there's no
say.
motivated purchaser.
there's-
They were purchasers. If
No.
somebody brought it to Mar West and said, are you interested in buying this property? I'll paraphrase. Don White, top real estate, commercial real estate guys in Manitoba. Comes in, he brings them leads all the time, every day almost. He comes in and says, are you interested in this property? Cornelius Jr. looks at it, reads it, determines at 5%, they're not prepared to transact at 5%, particularly in a row house, wooden construction. So he said, no, not interested.
Okay, sorry, which property are you just,
We're talking about the
are you talking about Boardroom?
Ward. Yeah, Ward.
Okay,
Yeah, sorry. Just talk about the cap rate, because the cap rate on Ward.
Yeah, so
the city's
let's
using-
keep this to the cap rate and move on, just because we still have quite a few
Yeah.
more
Okay,
matters on the docket for this morning, and
Yeah.
I mean,
so
the whole thing about Ward, it's not one of the properties on the docket. We've
Yeah,
heard
but
the
it's the only
argument
one-
about the cap rate
Yeah.
on Ward
Yeah,
numerous times, and I mean, again, it
Yes.
usually goes to weight
All right,
yeah.
for us.
fair enough.
Is
So
that-
let's assume that you heard this before? Okay.
We have more than once, okay, and are
Alright.
very familiar
Yeah.
with both sides of the
Yes.
of the
okay.
argument.
It's that simple, that's what happened, is they bought it for 18, not 18. Say, had they paid the full asking price, then it would have been a 5 cap.
I just have to address the rebuttal.
That's
Voice
fair.
up there,
No,
but
no,
I'm-
that's
you
fair.
heard it, so,
I just don't want like a, whole hour about,
okay, I just wanna make sure we get our opinion out there,
no,
there
that's,
too.
and that's no problem.
Okay,
Let's just keep it to the, issue of cap rate and not,
okay, so,
what kind of carpet is in the
so he,
property.
okay. Yeah. So then it was first offered to the purchaser, Ward was, and then it was brought back again,
A
saying
year
that they were
later.
motivated?
No.
I thought I heard you say motivated.
People on Southview were motivated purchasers, they were
Not
losing their
Ward.
property.
Okay,
They needed to bail out, so they bailed out and they had to give them guarantee, an occupancy guarantee. Ward was offered, the appraisal that was shown to Mr. Martin had nothing to do, it wasn't written for them, wasn't written for a sale, it was written to different groupings, it's addressed wrongly. It shouldn't have been released, quite frankly, but we didn't release it, it was released by the appraisers.
okay. Well,
And they came in, so Mr. White came back a year later and said, you weren't interested in 5%, would you consider it a 5.5 cap? And Cornelius said, yes, he would. So they went through the numbers and they made an offer that was accepted at 18 million. And that results in a 5.23 cap. But they also adjusted the NOI, thinking there's economies of scale by having cutting down on that caretaking cost.
is it reasonable to share a caretaker for 103 units?
Well, they're live-in care, the problem with Ward, in the real world, you look at your caretaker unit and that's a loss of revenue. You pay a salary to a caretaker, plus you provide them a suite. If you're familiar with Ward, they're all 2-bedroom suites. So paying $1,000 plus or losing $1,000 plus for a caretaker suite is significant to most owners.
All right, on to the second.
And they do, and let me just finish, they have 200 Bellevue and 229 Kearney are 2 apartment blocks in close proximity across the street, and they share it. That was their beta model, their test to see if it worked, and it does.
Okay, so now,
Yeah.
he's moving on with his questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So, why didn't you use the actual expenses on the subject property for your calculation on page 3? The actual expenses, I think, are 9.
Well, part of the reason is that these costs are actually higher than than your model, except that the former vendor is picking up the first 2 years of repair and maintenance. So we've used the same ratio as the city, 34.67.
But they did report repair and maintenance on their income and expense
Yes,
statements,
but
right?
they have some that repair, anything structural or capital is warranted. General repair and maintenance, cutting grass, shoveling snow, isn't recoverable from the vendor.
Do you have any invoices for that structural stuff?
No.
Okay. It was confirmed last time at 35,732,000, correct?
Correct.
Sorry,
At,
what was that number?
35,732,000.
At 5% capital.
732.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Hey, Mr. Woodburn?
Mr. Story,
Mhm.
did I hear you say that you and the appraiser agreed on an NOI of 1 920, 780, verbally.
The assessor.
I
No,
didn't
I-
agree with anything, I just simply stated that
No, no,
their
I-
actual NOI is very
No,
close
it
to
came
our
out,
model.
it came out of your brief.
Yeah, but that
Brief
wasn't
was
me,
brief.
me saying anything, I wasn't agreeing to anything, I was just stating a calculation.
1920, 780.
Yeah,
Yeah,
And then I heard you say that 1920, 780, and we agreed with the appraiser.
well,
We
this
have
came out
agreement.
of, this came from his material.
Mhm.
That's in the assessor's brief.
So are we agreed on a NOI of 1920,
So that's the
780?
actual NOI,
Yeah, but
yeah.
we're less than 2% off on this property, I think our model NOI is supported.
1952860.
Yeah, we've got what 952 and they're what 1920, like within 2%.
We're
So we usually
1920.
adjust within
Mhm.
two, under that small of a number. So, no, 1952.
Is your number?
Yes,
Okay,
I'm
that's,
not changing it.
we need clarification on that.
Yes.
Just yeah, thank you, no further questions.
And I have no questions. Is there a need for summary?
I'm good.
I'm good too. It's cap rate, folks.
Cap
Do
rate.
your best.
We got it.
Always is.
I promise that you will read that appraisal this week.
Oh, sorry, I do have one question, I'm sorry, what did you say the 2018, you just said 5% cap, sorry?
I
Or,
think
sorry,
6 at 5%.
5% somebody said, okay.
And that's right, I added some, anecdotally, Mr. Lucky said, yes, typically there's 6, but this is brand new.
Right.
So it's at the municipal board, I should say.
Okay, oh, okay, it has been appealed to.
5% is at the municipal board.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we will take a brief recess. All right, we'll call this meeting back to order. The next matter on the docket is 41 Taft Crescent. Mr. Assessor, please proceed when you're ready.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, we've just all been here for so long.
So you swear?
Yes.
You say your name?
Trevor Smith.
Do you swear that the evidence you're about to present is the truth and whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay.
All right, now you can proceed.
All right, file number 19-4294, roll number 12011105000, 41 Taft Crescent. It's a commercial row house, 1 to 2 stories, built in 1976. There's 9 suites, assessed value $1,085,000. MHRC owns it, it's rent geared to income. So, you go to page 2, you see they're being good and handing in all their mailers. Page 3 shows our income value summary. Pretty sure, let me just glance ahead here, I'm pretty sure for this property and the other properties, the applicant and I are actually in agreement in terms of net operating income. So, I'm not gonna belabor the income calculations too much for the purposes of saying that. So there's 2 income streams, 10G and 20G. The only difference between 10 and 20 is one is buildings with up to 4 units, and then 20, that's 10. 20 is more than 4 units. They're the same type of units. So it's just more of an accounting type thing. 975 on the rent. It's been applied with our model parameters and our 4.7 cap rate. Comes up with our value here of $1,085,000. Last time around at the Board of Revision, it was cut from $1,020,000 down to $987,000. That's 2018-97. Page 4 shows our rent comps, and 5 shows the CMHC townhouse review, shows the average. This is in the Fort Rouge area, so not a good amount of data for townhouses, so we just used, for the purpose of analysis, use the core area. For the 3 bedrooms, shows 1149. We're using 975 Got this one, income quality in our model below average to reflect the fact that it is social housing. Property is located in the Lord Roberts neighborhood, tucked in behind Sam Southern Arena, Safeway, South Osborne area. So we have our cap rates on page 6, it's our typical chart, and our cap rate examples. Again, what you see in all our briefs on page 6A, again, not comparable specific to the subject property. Just shows how our modeled parameters are what's actually going on out there. Page 8 shows the income and expenses, but again, it's rent geared to income. We agree on the NOI, so I'm not gonna go too much into that one. So I got a permit on page 10 showing landlord improvements to one unit of the multi-residential row house building. Permit to include replacement of kitchen cabinets, flooring, painting, switches, light fixtures, doors before covering any work, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that is from 2010, and it says declared construction value 23,000 on it, because the last page is just a picture of the exterior from Google Maps. So what we're looking at here for this property and the other properties is this capitalization rate. We use modeled capitalization rates on the property as per age, area, and size. So for the 76, gets the 4.7 cap rate in this region. That's my evidence, thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions for the assessor?
I do have a few, yes. As you mentioned, this is model driven, the
Yes.
evaluation today. The capitalization rate of 4.7%, is that, how is that derived? What are the?
That's based on age, area, and size. So for the age, area, and size of this property, it gets a 4.7 cap.
Okay. So the size would have an impact in what's driving your cap rate then?
Correct.
There's been no inspection of this property or the others, I don't believe.
No, not, I can't speak on the others in terms of my notes on this one. No recent inspection, no.
Okay, and the permit that you had included on page 10, that was from 2010, and it was in respect of a single unit?
That's what it's indicating, yes.
Okay. With a value of $23,000?
Yes, correct.
Okay. The and I'm not sure if you'll have this answer necessarily or not, but there tends to be far fewer townhouse apartments out there and far fewer trades of them. Are you aware of if there are any townhouse sales included in the city's capitalization rate ratio study?
As I'm not a modeler, I'm not privy to that information, so I don't know.
That's fair. Aside from rebuttal that I have to present on the cap rates on page number 6, that's all of my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Whitford. Any questions?
No, I'm fine, thanks.
I have no questions either, so please proceed with your presentation.
Did you want to do rebuttal at this point or at the end?
You can do it now.
Do it now, okay. So, I'm not sure how many you're going to need there.
This is for-
Just give her all of them.
Is it for one file or is it for all?
It's for all of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
So So again, this is with respect to the city's capitalization rate evidence on page number 6A. I'll try and be efficient about this, as I believe we've probably all heard it before.
We appreciate that, thank you.
And we'll run through it quickly. Let's talk about 333 Ward. I'm with a bit of levity, right?
Funny man.
Late. Okay. I think that may have been covered already. So just inside of the brief, you can see the first page of the document there is the standard on verification and adjustment of sales. So the city is a member of the IAAO, the International Association of Assessing Officers. This is the IAAO's document with regard to verification and adjustment of sales. I will get you to flip forward a couple of pages to the first one with text. 5.10, property characteristic changes. The page number at the bottom indicates number 13 if you're trying to find it. So if we read 5.10, property characteristic changes, it says, sales data files should reflect the physical characteristics of the property when sold. For ratio studies, if significant physical changes have occurred to the property between the date of sale and the appraisal date, the sale should not be included. So what that is stating is that if the property was purchased and was then renovated subsequently, that the property should not be included in the ratio study for sales because the physical condition of the property has changed. Now, what that means with regard to investment properties is that obviously if you're renovating an investment property, you're particularly a multifamily property, you're changing the revenue stream, you're increasing your revenue, and you're increasing the return to the investor. So that is what that's indicating. There is one further line there that has been brought up, so I'll just cover that myself. It states the sale may still be valid for mass appraisal modeling by matching the sale price to the characteristics that existed on the date of sale. So if you were to make adjustments, the adjustments that you would make in an investment property would be adjusting the income stream to reflect the new condition of the property, which would then give you a more realistic capitalization rate. So that is the background with regard to the IAAO and the verification of sales that should be included in the ratio study, so in the model that the city would use in developing their assessments. So the point of all of this is, if you look at 3 of the sales on number 6A of the city's brief there, the first 3, 191 Roche, 394 Talbot, and 285 Maxwell. Each of these sales was purchased for a renovation, was subsequently renovated, and their incomes were significantly altered with a much better return to the investor. So the rest of the brief covers this. I'm not going to run through it in detail other than to say it is all publicly available information. It gives you an indication of the low rents at the time of purchase, and in a couple of cases it gives you the adjusted rent following that. In particular, I will point you to 394 Talbot, where it indicates the 1-bedroom rents were $537, 2 bedrooms at $653 per month, and then following renovation, they were at $800 for a 1-bed and $900 for the 2-bed. So significant change to the income stream to that investor. That is my rebuttal evidence. So the point of that is, and just to wrap it up, these 3 properties should not be included in the ratio studies, as the cap rates that are resultant from that are not, they're not true capitalization rates, and they should not be included in the model. And because they're included in the model, it skews the model downwards, and you have lower cap rates than are true reflections of the market. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So should we do questions on the rebuttal then?
Certainly.
Okay, so let's do questions on the rebuttal then, and then we'll go into the defense.
All right, so page 12 of your rebuttal. It says that the property was purchased based on its net operating income. This is the sales mailer. The purchaser checked off yes, and then they assumed a 5% capitalization rate. Does this not support our value on our cap on Roche of 4.84%? 4.84%?
No, so I'm just going to ask you to point out to where it says that it was, what was
Page
the first
12.
point? Yeah,
And then there's the section E, line 32. Was the purchase price based on the property's net operating income? And they checked off yes. Then underneath, if yes, what is the cap rate in which you assumed you purchased the property? And then they indicate to the city that this property was purchased at 5%.
right, okay, so I'm reading that as well. So yes, it does state that, and they, on the in-place income, they paid a 5% capitalization rate. If you flip back a page to number 11, it states, number 16, did you or do you intend to make major repairs or renovations to the property? Yes. If yes, indicate the type. Suite upgrades is what is noted there. So their intent was to upgrade the units themselves, obviously, and change the income stream to that property.
Okay, so basically, which I think I understand what you're saying is that you think that that 5% that they put down is too low based on the condition of the property?
No, the 5% that they're indicating on that page, they're not buying the in-place income. And this is, again, a function of filling out a form that they're required to fill out for the city. This is not, they didn't buy the property based on the in-place income, intending to keep it as such. But if you review it as that, then their cap rate was 5%, yes, on the in-place income. They then changed the property, increase their return, and that changes the capitalization rate significantly.
Okay, so so it is conditioned as they purchased it based on its income at the time, they said 5%.
That is what they stated, yes.
That's my only comment on the rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Woodbred.
Nothing.
I have no questions on the rebuttal, so please proceed with your
Okay,
presentation.
great, thank you. We're on Taft, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
What would you do if I said no?
I would be thrown for
No, we're on 333 Ward.
Yes.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, so 41 Taft Crescent, as already mentioned, this is a Manitoba Housing owned property. It is operated on a rent geared to income basis, so we cannot base a realistic market value on rent geared to income. So the income stream is disregarded essentially, and we look at the property as what it would trade for on the market, what it would rent for on the market, what normalized expenses would be, etc. So that is our approach to the valuation. Property was built in 1976. There are a total of 9 units. One of the units did receive upgrading in that 2010 year, and I believe, unfortunately, that a number of our photos are specifically from that unit. As you can see, the changed floor, as well as the cabinets in the kitchen that would not be original to the 1976 timeframe. However, the remainder of the property is dominantly original, except where there was breakage that would occur where they needed to do repairs or replace things as they were broken. So the property is fairly typical of Manitoba Housing properties in that the wear and tear that these properties receive is generally above what you'd find in the normal market, given the cohort that they serve, the socioeconomic issues. They just tend to receive rougher treatment and require more repair, more expenses, etc. with regard to the property. Page number 9 will show you the location of the property itself. It's in that Lord Roberts area on the west side of Osborne. This is, well, this area is in the south end of the city. If you have a drive through, it's an area of smaller lots, smaller homes, typically smaller, lower cost homes, etc. So it's not, it's by no means a bad area, but it's not indicative of much of the south end of the city. Looking at, as Matthew has stated, we are in agreement on the net operating income. We did go through the valuation for this property as well as the others, and it appears that they are in line with what we would view a market would produce for the subject property. Looking at row houses overall, as already mentioned earlier today, you have a lower density development. You have a property that has 9 units with 9 different operating systems, so each of those will have a hot water tank, a furnace, its own roof, obviously, and all of these items that require repair are spread out over a lower number of units. So you have all of those costs on a lower number of units to bear them, so therefore your operating costs will typically be higher than the norm in the marketplace. To that end, on the purchase side, looking at townhomes in general, there are fewer of them out there. There's several reasons for that. They tend to have a higher number of bedrooms, unit count, so higher number of bedrooms in each unit. These are in lower demand in the marketplace, so you tend to have greater vacancy, etc., more difficulty leasing them, more carrying costs, etc., for properties such as that. Very few of them trade on the marketplace, not because they're in demand and tightly kept, it's because there's not a lot of demand in the marketplace to trade them. In fact, I believe there was one that was mentioned earlier where they were having difficulties in leasing the new product up in a good area of town. Now, looking at capitalization rate, I know that the panel members here have heard my arguments with regard to social housing as outlined on page number 13, and the reasons for a greater cap rate than a normal market apartment. I'm happy to go through them if you wish. I think in the interest of time, we probably don't need to cover that material yet again. The point of this is that social housing properties would trade on the marketplace for an increased capitalization rate versus a normal market apartment. The cap rates that we present on my page number 13, I'll make a point. First of all, please strike out number 2, 430 Young. We've been stated some new information on that, and we're doing background research on it, and I'd like to exclude that at this point. Our cap rate study, with that exception, gives us a range of 5.44% for the newest trade at 2006 property at 333 Ward, 103 units traded to an astute investor, up to 6.65%. Now these vary in comparability, obviously, in terms of size and magnitude, scope to each of the properties today, but they are a good indication of what cap rates were being paid for in-place income. Each of these properties was purchased for the existing NOI and was not subsequently renovated. Moving on to the market participants, Colliers and CB Richard Ellis. Essentially, we're seeing a flat line with regard to capitalization rate between 2016, the last assessment cycle, and 2018, our current assessment cycle, as far as the valuation dates go. Colliers is indicating for low-rise apartments, 5.25% to 6% in 2016, 5% to 6% in 2018. Now, there's no specific row housing or townhome category in this, part of the reason being there's much less of them and much less demand, so they're not really viewed in the same manner by either investors or the main brokerages. CB Richard Ellis's range are exactly stable between 5.5% and 6% for low-rise A, and 5.75% to 6% for low-rise B. Now, the subject is a townhome, and does not specifically fall within those guidelines. It's also, as stated, social housing, and there's the issues with regard to risk that go along with that I will not get into. Balancing that, the property is a smaller number of units at 9 total units. So I am making a slight adjustment to what I've used here. I've been adjusting my cap rate downwards to 6%. And this will give us a final market value of $850,000. And the addendum materials are there for you to review at your convenience. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions for Mr. Smith?
Yeah, okay. Just starting on your cover page here. I know we only have one permit for one unit being renovated in 2010. Just looking at the pictures on the outside, it does look like all the units have new windows, correct?
I believe windows were changed out, yes. It seems very unusual that the city would not have any permits, though, particularly given that it's Manitoba housing. They would avoid a process like that.
Looks like some of the exterior siding, that's been done too, to more than one unit, does it not?
Well, it's difficult to say. I don't know what it was like before. I think we'd be speculating, but certainly some windows have been changed, as noted.
Okay.
But with regard to the units that were visited, they were not renovated.
Okay. So, the photos, you said you visited more than one?
With the one exception of the one that we have some photos.
Okay.
Some of these photos are from the unit that had been changed in 2010.
But you visited more than one unit, you mentioned?
Yes, our person that inspected it did visit more than one unit.
Okay.
So I think perhaps the bottom of page 6 would be an original bathroom.
Okay. But no pictures of the...
Unfortunately, no.
So it does look like it's had some work done to it, though. Correct?
Well, as noted, I do agree that it appears that they have changed the windows, but predominantly we're looking at what is this property going to produce. And renovations that are going to produce a higher income stream would be renovations to the interior, your typical kitchen, bathroom, flooring type of changes.
In your opinion, is South Osborne a good location for rental properties? Like, is it a location that has a strong demand?
I would think it would be. It wouldn't be a weak demand. I would put it that way, I guess.
And given that it's what are these all? These are all, I think they're 3-bedroom units. So it'd be likely that like a family would rent them out?
Yes, so that's again, pretty specific to Manitoba Housing. Their mandate obviously is to provide low-cost housing to people in need of that, and that includes families, so they build townhomes with greater number of bedrooms to meet that need. Now, in the normal market, that's in less demand.
So it would be good for families, given that has the number of bedrooms. It's in South Osborne. I know it's, about half a block away from Sam Southern Arena. I think there's a library there too.
I think so.
Grocery store. Would this not make it more attractive if purchased on a private for-profit basis, which is what we're looking at right now?
So, a couple of points there. Yes, it is a half block off, or roughly 2 blocks, I guess, block and a half, whatever it is, off of Osborne, so you're not right on a transit route. You have to walk to transit. Yes, there is a grocery store relatively close by, that's a plus. Beyond that, when you look at the immediate area, and really it is the immediate area around this property itself, you have an awful lot of social housing concentrated in one small little area there. In fact, there's a number of these other units within that one block, and then you have the tower right by Sam Southern there that is also social housing. There's a concentration of social housing there. This is not a plus in the marketplace, certainly, with regard to either tenancy or investment.
And, you've heard our comments on Ward, so I'll withhold those. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Woodbred.
No questions, thanks.
And I have no questions. Is there a need for summary?
Thank you.
Fine.
Thank you.
Sorry, I meant to make one point. I did not represent the client in the 2018 cycle.
Thank you. The next matter on the docket is 553 Kyle Moore.
Okay, file number 19-1760, uh, 553 Calmore, roll number 120-111-71500, commercial row house, 8 units, 1978, assessed 929,000. Actual year built 1978, construction class D, wood or steel frame walls. I believe Kylemore is in a similar neighborhood as the last one. Yes, it is, it's right by the last one. So, again, we agree on the net operating income of this property. So it's a cap rate, you just heard a little go back and forth on that. The cap rate there, so without belaboring it too much, we have our cap rates and the appellant has theirs. Thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. Mr. Smith, do you have questions?
I have no questions.
Okay.
Nothing.
And I have no questions, so please proceed with your
Okay.
presentation.
Try and be that speedy. 553 Kyle Moore. If you flip to my page number 9, it's essentially adjacent to the Taft property that we were just dealing with, in that exact same concentration of social housing in that immediate area there. Again, we're dealing with 3-bedroom townhome units, so I will largely restrict myself to cap rate 2. There's a few photos of the property. And you can flip through and see those beginning on page 4. Looks like this unit had to have cabinetry replaced due to damage. And if you look at the general wear and tear, you can see even the renovated units in Manitoba housing tend to go through more wear and tear. So if you look at the bottom of page 6 and some relatively recent tiling by the look of it, you can obviously see the damage that has been done there in the short term, as well as the general wear and tear on page number 7 as you look at the units. So this property would be in below average condition. Looking at my page number 3, property was reduced in the last cycle to $624,000. Our market value today is $727,000 for the subject property. With regard to cap rate, we're looking at townhomes, greater expenses, lesser demand out there. If we're looking at 3-bedroom units, lesser demand in the market as far as tenancy, and certainly in terms of investors. And our general range that we're looking at is that 5.5% to 6% range. Now, balancing this, we have a total of 8 units, so it's obviously on the lower end of the scale in terms of number of units, so that would drive the cap down a little bit. So we're at 6% as we were with the Taft property, giving us our market value of $727,000. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
On page 5, it looks like the kitchen's been redone. Is that, have they been refreshing?
They have not refreshed the whole property, no. That was repairs, is my indication. They had to replace it due to damage.
Okay, so are the kitchens redone in all the properties?
No.
Bathrooms, we don't have any pictures of the vanity or anything like that. Have those been redone? Well, it looks like it's the same color as
So that's the same unit.
Okay, so page 6, the countertop matches the countertop on page 5 for the kitchen. So it looks like they would have redone the vanity there too?
They did that particular unit, yes, and as you can see, there's already damage to the backsplash, et cetera. The bathroom or the tub there would appear to be original, and just with regard to a refresh, they have not refreshed the whole property.
You inspect the property?
We did inspect the property, yes.
Okay. Do they do windows on this one too? Looks like there's some new windows. PVC anyway.
Let me check my notes. They may have been changed since 1978. I have no indication with regard to the windows, just that the general condition was fairly rough in terms of broken doors, scratched walls, and bathrooms and flooring, etc.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Mr. Whitbread?
No questions.
I just had one question, like on page 7, so was that just wiring just stapled to the floor, random place?
That might be a tenant issue,
Oh.
like a cable run to the basement. I'm
Or
not,
something?
it does appear to be. I don't know that I'd say that would be the norm, but it's there. It was more the condition of the walls and the stairwell, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question. Need for summary?
I'm good.
Mr.
I'm
Smith?
fine, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next property is 10 Newdale Avenue. Please proceed when you are ready.
Well, file number 19-1, 777, roll number 030603891110 Newdale Avenue. Another MHRC commercial row house. Assessed $6,109,000. Built with 72, 6 buildings, 2 stories, 50 units. On this particular one, 50 outdoor parking spots, construction class D. Wood or steel frame walls, I believe, in this one. Yeah, net operating income, there's no dispute on that one, so for this one, it's the capitalization rate. Again, there's no non-co-op on it because they've been good at handing in their mailers. You'll see our income value summary on page 3. Property is located down in the south end. Let me pull up the map here from the appellant. Just off of Pembina Highway, near the bottom part of where Dalhousie hits Pembina, close to the perimeter. So it's down the south end. We've got our model parameters on page 3. We use a 5.3 cap rate on this property as per age, area, and size. Our rent comparables are on page 4, and our CMAC analysis is on page 5. You'll see that we've got average monthly rent for the 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units, $1,188.52, using the Fort Garry numbers, and using the suburban area for 2 bedrooms, which were unavailable. We get our rent. It's not in dispute, so I won't go on it. Our cap rates charts are on 6 and 6A. It has our sales. So you see an exterior picture on the last page. I agree, it just shows one of the units, 10-year deal. Looks like some of the windows are done. The roof looks like it's in good condition. In the exterior, I didn't have any interior pictures, but it looks like it's being well maintained. So it's a cap rate issue. Our cap is 5.3 for the age, area, and size of this property. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions?
No, I have no questions.
Thank you. Mr. Rupert?
No questions, thank you.
One question. I guess I asked it at the beginning. Given workload, you weren't able to inspect any of these properties?
Unfortunately, no.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, number 10, Newdale. So this property has had some degree of refresh. The way that Manitoba Housing works is they obviously have a budget every year. They have a certain amount of money available for refreshing units, and by refreshing it means essentially doing the basics and installing long-wearing finishes, so they don't obviously go overboard and improve the properties to reflect standard market level of finish that one might see if a normal market apartment was renovated. You would typically see a higher level of finish than what Manitoba Housing does in their refreshes. So there has been some degree of refresh at this particular property. I don't have the specific number of units or whether they are complete, but you can see some evidence of that in some of the photos here. Now, to balance that, I will state you can obviously see the exteriors have not been renovated. I'm not certain that all of the windows here necessarily have been redone or anything of that nature. In fact, I don't believe they all have. And if you flip to my page numbers 6 onwards there, you can see the refresh that they do is not, certainly is not everything. They have done flooring, they have done kitchen, and they do bathroom to a certain extent. Now, if we look at the condition of the walls, obviously, this unit has been refreshed. The walls are as they are, significant wear and tear. You look at the bathroom, that is the condition of the bathroom. You look at the kitchen, obviously redone. It doesn't show particularly well in this picture, but there's significant water damage that happened from the sink there. It's difficult to see in that photo, but the cabinetry has certainly been damaged. So the point being here, yes, you can refresh them, but given the cohort that of the market that Manitoba Housing serves, the length of time that those units remain in that newer condition is relatively short, and certainly shorter than in the normal market state. And that if you're in the market, you have a damage deposit that you don't want to risk not getting back. Looking at property itself, so again, townhomes built in 72. And if we look at the unit split on page number 3, we have 12 two-beds, 24 three-bedroom units, and 14 four-bedroom units. So we're going up in unit count here in terms of the bedroom size. The majority of the property is 3 and 4 bedrooms. We're looking at 38 out of 50 units being 3 and 4 bedrooms. I can't state enough that these are in much lower demand in the marketplace in terms of rentals and by investors as well. They drive higher cap rates, and given the issues with regard to risk with social housing and the wear and tear that these places receive, they're not going to trade in that investment grade range of 5.5%, 6%. It's going to be above that. I haven't applied a significant premium to this. I have used a cap rate of 6.25%. Perhaps I could be higher, but we're looking at a fair market value here, and I felt, given the resultant value, that this would be appropriate. So using a cap rate of 6.25%, we come to $5,180,000 in terms of value. And again, I'm being as fair as possible here. If I'm not playing the issue of asking for 6.5 and intending to get 6 or anything. I feel 6.25 is appropriate for the property. So our final market value is $5,180,000. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions?
Do you think this property's proximity to the University of Manitoba would up its attractiveness for potential rental tenants?
I think as an overall comment, proximity to U of M is a good thing. Typically, 1 and 2 bedroom units is obviously what's going to rent to university students in the market generally. There's also brand new student housing going in at the corner of Bison that will suck up a lot of that demand. We're looking at 3 and 4 bedroom units here. That's targeted at families.
You mentioned that because of the condition of the property, you applied a higher cap rate.
Nope.
No? Okay.
That's one element of what was applied, but I would not single that out as the one that's driving the higher cap rate. It's a part of the overall look at cap rate.
Okay. Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Whitman.
Just coming back on a question. Property is available to income-controlled situations by Manitoba Housing. Maybe people on social assistance, people who can't afford rent. when I look at the financial statements, ability to pay is an issue.
That is how it's operated, yes, rent geared to income.
Yeah.
So it's based on 28-30% of your
Yeah.
income.
And this is in no way a discriminatory comment, but would those people be likely, the people who go into these houses, go to university at that time?
Well, again, we'd be generalizing, but I guess it would be my expectation that there would be a lower number of them that would likely be going to university.
Thank you, that's all.
And I have no questions. Need for summary?
No. No, thanks.
Okay, the next property is 60 West Grove Way.
All right, file number 19-3377, roll number 01004704-100, 60 West Grove Way. It's under MHRC row house. This one's by the west perimeter. I believe it is off of Roblin. Let me see here. Let me double check. I'm relying on the applicant's picture on my own. Yeah, it's like west perimeter and, yeah, Roblin, okay. 1972, 10 buildings, 2 stories, 52 suites, 43 outdoor parking spots, assessed value $6,519,000 for April 1/18, which is our 2020 earlier. Construction class D wood or steel frame walls. Again, this one comes down to capitalization rate as well. So our modeled cap on this property, age, area, and size, calibrated is 5.3. Our rent comparables on page 4 and 5 show CMHC analysis and comparable rents support what we've signed to this property. We have it below average in our model to reflect the fact that it is social housing, so we do recognize that. Page 8 shows the financials, so it is again ability to pay, so they get subsidies, so we just go to the market. The last page shows a picture the exterior of the property. So, based on the model parameters, we were agree on net operating income. The cap rate was 5.3, yes. For the model age, area, and size, that's my evidence.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. Questions?
No, I have no questions.
Mr. Whitbread?
None.
And I have none, so please proceed with your presentation.
Okay, 60 West Grove Way, built in 1972, and we have a total of 52 units here. Again, we're looking at higher number of bedrooms per unit, so we have 13 2-bedrooms, 28 3-bedrooms, and 11 4-bedroom units. So we're looking at 39 out of 52 units being 3 and 4 bedrooms on the higher end. This property has generally not been refreshed. If you look at the photos, interior, the one kitchen obviously had to have cabinetry put in at some point, but you can see that they were currently doing a repair to the cabinetry because of damage that had occurred to it. Flooring is all original, bathroom is all original, you can see the walls and stairwells, etc. This is the normal state of the property on an overall basis, so certainly in below average condition on the marketplace. So let's, as we are in agreement Again, on net operating income, let's move on to cap rate. So I can't emphasize enough, there is a much lower demand from investors for townhouse properties for the reasons stated already. You have greater expenses spread over a smaller number of units. You have more capital that tends to need to be infused for roofs and systems and things like that, as you have significant duplication of furnaces and hot water tanks and all the other things that are required, roofs, et cetera, again, spread over a smaller number of units. Tend to have greater number of bedroom units, which are in lower demand, which equals greater vacancy, so very, very few trades of them. That's probably why there's not a category by the main market brokerages broken out, or by the city, because we simply don't have the trades of them. But when they do trade, they do drive higher cap rates. So as a starting point, they would be at a minimum at the upper end of the cap rate range that we're seeing in the market, and that being that 5.5%, 6% range, 5.5 to 6 in 6+ in our review. So looking at the subject through that lens, again, same thing. I could perhaps have applied a higher cap rate, but in light of the value that is produced overall, I felt that a 6.25% cap rate is appropriate for the subject, which gives us our $5,528,000 market value.
Thank you very much. Do you have questions for Mr. Smith?
Yeah. So you mentioned that MHRC properties in rough condition, they play a role in determining what sort of cap rate you would assign them, is that correct?
Condition is one of the elements, certainly.
Okay. Do purchasers ever look at properties that are worn down and see an opportunity to renovate and then perhaps raise the rent above RTP guidelines?
They do, and I think we've actually kind of addressed that in my rebuttal evidence, in that what the purchaser is buying then is not the property as it is. They're buying what they can turn that property into and what their increased return will be, and that is not market value based on the property as it sits. And that is what our task is here today, is to value the property in its current condition as of the valuation date, not what any potential future return might be.
Those are my questions, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Woodward?
I'm fine, thanks.
I have no questions. Any need for summary?
That's fine, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I'll now close this hearing.